Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Coming at you, bright, sunshiny. I hope it's sunshiny tomorrow. It's sunshiny right now as we're recording this on Sunday, July 11th. It's about 6:30. Game 3 of the finals has not yet been played. Not that really matters. Who cares about the finals? It's just the finals. But we have some scintillating Knicks content for you, as always. Before I get to the special thing, let me introduce my co-host, Jeremy Cohen. Jeremy, how are you, sir?
Doing great, John. Today has been all sports, all the time.
So can I, hold on, before we get to the special thing and what we're actually going to talk about today. So I got to we're supposed to record this pod, by the way, 5 p.m. Supposed to start recording this pod, 5 o'clock in the evening time. It is now, as I speak, 6:26 p.m. Can one of you, Andrew's here as well, lurking in the background, tell me, because I literally don't know, what soccer match prevented you from being available in a timely manner as we agreed upon?
So this is the Euros or Euro Cup.
The Euros?
In this case. Whatever. Yeah, it's someone who's better at knowing soccer, football, whatever, than I am. They will correct me, I no doubt.
Oh, okay.
The whole point is every 4 years there's a tournament, and last year
so it's like the World Cup, but only
just
Europe.
It's continent focused, right? And they had other continents doing their thing, and like Argentina won last night. Lionel Messi won his first major tournament for Argentina, but today was Italy versus England. And
those are
England
two
scored.
Important countries.
They are indeed.
That's great.
England scored in the second minute. Italy scored in the 67th minute.
Okay.
Went to
I'm surprised Italy didn't score in the 69th minute. But
we'll see. If you add 2 and 67, then they both did, so it works out. But the point here is that Italy did win this tournament.
Oh, that's great.
Viva Italia! There you go. Shout out to my girlfriend's entire family that went to a full watch party in Queens today.
That's great.
Which is the reason that I was watching, which is why I was A-OK being on board with Jeremy's. Can we delay in case the match goes over?
All right.
So Italy, I just want to throw out the other sports that happened. The Mets blew a 5-0 lead and lost. And oh my God, Jeremy, the Yankees.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yankees blew it too.
Oh my God. I don't even have a snarky Mets fan thing to say. So John, the Yankees are up 7-2 going into the 9th inning. And you're aware of that game. You're aware of the tension between the Yankees and the Astros, right?
Yes.
So they played the Astros today. And yesterday, former Astro Garrett Cole, with arguably the best pitching performance of the season, non-Jacob deGrom division, threw a complete game shutout, won the game 1-0, and threw 130 pitches. 129 to be exact.
Incredible.
So the Yankees were 3 outs away from sweeping the Astros in a hint of revenge. And they gave up 6 runs in the bottom of the 9th to the Astros.
It's not what you want.
And Jose Altuve, the villain of the sign-stealing scandal, I think, hit a 3-run walk-off home run to win it.
Oof.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Oz is very upset, is all I'm saying.
Oh, I'm sure he is too. I also think his preferred fighter of choice lost last night. I know there was an MMA fight last night. See?
Yes, there was a pretty bad injury, right, Jeremy? Conor McGregor broke his leg.
It was awful.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's lots of not what you want for my buddy Bernard. Also, sorry for your loss with the Yankees, Jeremy. But at least Frank Ntilikina had a nice showing against Team Spain in the next match.
And Vildoza did great.
Vildoza wasn't that efficient, but
great enough in the sense that he looked good.
He looked good. Hit a half-court 3.
Yeah, and shout out Team Nigeria. That was pretty impressive by them. Fantastic.
Big ups to Nigeria. We love all. You know what? Anytime Kevin Durant could lose a basketball game, I'm here for it.
Do we want to shout out the sport we played last night, John? Technically,
right. We're really putting off the Knicks content here. Very briefly, shout out to the Hard Knicks Life podcast. One of their hosts, both of their hosts, Barry and Craig. Barry hosted a poker night at his humble abode up on the north end of Long Island. Or north side of Long Island, I guess, whatever it is. And Andrew and I went and lost a few dollars, not too much money.
I lost all my money that I brought. There you go.
It was a $20 buy-in. Let's just say.
But I lost all of my money.
High rollers we are. I was the first one out though. But in fairness, I went in on two good hands and I got beat by better hands.
So Jeremy, are you a poker guy? Do you play?
No, not really.
So I'll spare the full details, but I won the first hand of the night, which if I can tell you now, John, I had a straight and 10 through ace. So it was like the highest straight possible. Yes. And I was I think the queen away from it being a royal flush. If I didn't know the people there and this was actually like a thing to actually play poker, I would have gone all in on the first hand, but it was like, then if they match me, then I'm the guy that went all in on poker night. And that's like the one hand I won last night. And then the rest is history.
It was one more than I won. Okay.
There you go.
Enough stalling. Sorry, folks. This is you gotta understand, this is our time to catch up. So, you're gonna get some of this. Which actually I guess leads me to the first thing, which is we have a special announcement. But we're not going to tell you right now. We're going to make you wait till the end of the episode. But we think it's a pretty cool thing. We hope you think it's a pretty cool thing. And, stick around for, after we're done talking about our subject today. By massive demand, by some demand, by at least one guy who reached out via DM. I don't know. One of those things. We're going to talk about Chris Paul today. So, we were planning on ending our cap or no cap series with Dame last week. And then Chris Paul went and, he made the finals, won the first two games of the finals. For all I know, we could be talking about he won game 3 of the finals. But again, we're recording this before that game has taken place. In any case, Chris Paul is really good. And he's probably going to win finals MVP. And he's been connected to the Knicks for going back a decade. And he has a chance to become a free agent this summer. So we thought, you know what? Let's tack on a bonus cap or no cap in which we at least kick the tires, right? We're just going to kick the tires on the point guard. Jeremy, did I set everything up okay before you want to add anything there?
No, I think you set it up perfectly. And I think I'm just going to get started.
Oh, wait, let me prepare myself for whatever this first screen is going to be.
All right. Well, again, John, you were sort of talking about it. The point guard everyone's been waiting for, Spencer Dinwiddie. Number one option by far. The Knicks cannot afford to give him 5 years, unfortunately. They can only give him the 4-year max, which is going to be, I don't know how you build a team around that afterwards, but that's what you could get if you're Spencer Dinwiddie. Joking aside, I actually don't hate Spencer Dinwiddie on the right terms. Granted, that's probably a 1-year deal, which he's not going to take. So it
is
probably
five for what did he request?
Well, he didn't really request it. He said that the Nets can offer him something like 196, and
that's
then
right.
He's like, I'm not saying that they're going to offer me that. And then he went on and said,
I will probably be back with the Nets if they offer that.
Right. But then right away he says like, but if it's like 5 for $125 million, which is like, oh yeah, that's so much more reasonable than what you just said, Spencer. So anyways, again, I think Dinwiddie's a much better passer than he was able to show in Atkinson's system. Unfortunately, he's not a great shooter, but he drives a ton. Again, like I think Knicks fans, a lot of them don't like him because of how corny he is. But this is a talented enough player where like I wouldn't be upset for, again, the right contract, but I don't think that's going to overlap. So
I don't mind Dinwiddie as much, but no, we're not going to spend this episode talking about.
No, we're instead going to spend the episode talking about. Well, if my computer decides to cooperate with me, next, the man of the hour, Colin Sexton. So Colin Sexton has been in the news recently. And basically, I mean,
this is terrible.
It's the sort of thing where, look, you've talked about Sexton. We've talked about Sexton. My thing with him is if he were so good that I don't think he would be on the move with Cleveland. I don't really think the philosophy of just like, hey, because they have Garland, Sexton is now totally available, holds a ton of water. I think it's true, but I don't think it's like the pressing point. And there's a reason he's available. I think he strikes me as a player who there's certainly potential there. I think he has not benefited from the fact that the Cavs have been crap for a number of years since he's been on the team, all 3. So I get it. I'm willing to give him a chance, but I think that, you're not going to necessarily look at him as a primary option. You're going to want bigs who can play make. You're going to want wings who can play make and fit him around. It's a lot of responsibility. It's one thing to trade for him. It's another thing to trade for him and then have to give him this payout. So,
can we just say if a team is willing to trade away a 22-year-old player averaging 24 points a game and I think 6 assists not 6 assists, 4 assists, and he's like 40% from 3, that should send up massive red flares from the organization. It doesn't matter what they want for him if they're like willing to get rid of that guy. But you know what? I'm all joking aside, I'm happy you opened up with like Dinwiddie and Sexton. I don't know if there's one more coming. But like it speaks to why, like, when these are the alternative like splashy options, it speaks to why people are like, well, maybe we should look into the 35-year-old who just led his team to the finals. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So jokes aside, we now have Chris Paul. We're
now with Chris Paul. Okay.
A lot of Chris Paul going on here, a lot of conversation. And I think the big thing with Chris Paul is, he's staying, right? Well, probably. But then again, there are reasons for why he would exit. Number one, obviously, this has to be the number one reason, is the Leon Rose connection. Leon Rose, his former agent, they're very close. Leon Rose obviously wanted to trade for Chris Paul. Paul preferred to go to Phoenix. That's closer to his family in LA. Judging by the fact that as we record this, they are 2 games away from Paul's first NBA championship. And by the time you hear this, they could even be 1 away. That speaks volumes for why it was the right decision. This is not the most important thing, but I think this is an interesting factor to it, which is the Matt Barnes rumor. So maybe a few months ago, give or take, Matt Barnes said that Chris Paul is very interested in New York, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's the New York experience that he wants or wanted. And he wouldn't have gotten that in New York this season because of the fact that COVID reduced crowd capacity to 2,000 fans or so for the vast majority of the year. So now we've seen fans come back into the stadiums and the arenas, and that could create something different for someone like Chris Paul. And a reason for that as well is potentially if he wins a title, there's really no risk for him to leave. Like before, it's the pressure of, is Chris Paul going to win a title? And if he didn't, it'd be, is Chris Paul going to win a title for the first time? And is he going to bring the Knicks back to their glory days for the first time in almost 50 years? That doesn't really happen here. Now it's like, hey, Chris Paul won. The rest, like if he goes to New York, it's gravy. Like he then has basically solidified himself as an even higher point guard on the depth charts of the laurels of history if you want to go there.
It's all gravy. And by the way, it's not like he won the championship and with the franchise he's been with for so long and he should ride off into the sunset. He's already been with 4 or 5 teams. So it's like going to one more. It's like, whatever.
All right. And I guess an added bonus is you could say the NBPA is in New York, the Players Association.
Yep.
I think that in a world that has become increasingly more technologically savvy, remote access, I don't think that really matters, but it's maybe something to keep in mind in case it's of interest, if a front office job or whatever it is down the line is something he wants. But I think the driving factor here, and we'll talk about this, is the whole conversation of the Suns owner, Robert Sarver. Sarver has been known to be, shall we say, cheap, frugal, whatever adjective that you want to use.
He's a cheap fuck.
That is certainly one way of putting it. Yes.
That's the way I would put it.
Right. So I guess the big thing here with Sarver is I just want to take a look at the Suns' upcoming payroll. So when the Suns traded for Chris Paul.
I can't wait to do this, by the way.
I know, right? I think that the philosophy was, okay, this is a Hall of Fame point guard that we can get for very little that we're trading out. It was Ricky Rubio, Kelly Oubre, a first round pick, and pretty some well rotation players. Right, a well protected 2022 first. So for them, it's probably like we deal with it for 2 years. It's not even deal with it. It's we make an upgrade for 2 years.
It was we'll stomach the second year of the contract, even if it ages poorly. What odds would you have given? I'm maybe getting ahead of us. What odds would you have given a year when the trade happened that Chris Paul would have opted out of this deal?
Very low. And when you look at the fact that right here on this payroll, The Suns have $125 million committed in 2021, 2022 with Chris Paul opting in. And then he's a free agent the next year, the same year where DeAndre Ayton is up for what will likely be a max extension. Mikal Bridges is going to make probably over $20 million. Can
we throw around some numbers here real quick?
Sure.
Okay. So you have it as Paul opting in on this sheet. Obviously, the whole reason we're having this conversation is because he could opt out.
Yes, this is for context Basketball References sheet, assuming he opts in. So
let's just say, let's put Paul aside for a second. Booker in 22-23 is due $33.7 million. If you're not watching the YouTube, I'll read it off for you. DeAndre Ayton is going to sign a max extension. It's not. He's the number one pick in the draft. He's about to win an NBA title. He just put up. What did he put up in the first finals game? Put up 21 and 19. Yeah. Efficient up the wazoo in the playoffs. So his rookie max, and if he he could make an All-NBA team next year. So, but what does it start at 26?
It's higher. By the time 2022 rolls around, it's probably going to be
close to 30.
Close to $30 million.
Great. So now we have his 30 on top of Booker's 33.7.
So now we're at $98 million, most likely.
So but we're putting aside Paul for the moment, right?
Correct. From
the other salaries: Crowder, Saric, and Jalen Smith, Cameron Johnson, Javon Carter, Mikal. I'm saying 4 for 125. 5 for 125. Excuse me. 5 for 125.
So the Spencer Dinwiddie Classic.
The Spencer Dinwiddie Classic. Yes. Maybe I'm a little high. What do you think? 5 for 120.
I could see the Suns being like, hey.
He'll ask for a fucking max. He's going to ask for a max.
Sure. He's not going to get it. But the whole point is I could see him saying, you could either lock me up for right now, or I could go onto the open market and test it out. And
someone's going to,
if someone like Otto Porter, if someone like Otto Porter,
and that was years ago. Otto Porter got $25 million a year, and Mikal is blowing him out of the water. Guy said 20 whatever in the final. Okay, so now let's put it at. I'll be conservative. Let's put it at 22. So 22 on top of, what'd you say, 94? So 98. That would, what's that?
98.
98 on. So then
we're already at $120 million. $120 million,
and that is without talking about the Chris Paul extension.
Correct. And not even Chris Paul. Cameron Payne is up for an extension this offseason. So if you're Cameron Payne and the Suns have early bird rights, so they can offer similar to what Reggie Jackson can get, which is like $11-12 million in that neighborhood.
Maybe might have priced himself out of that market, potentially. He's still young.
Yes, he is. But even still, you add that. We already just talked about $120 million for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys. We're now adding, say, $13 million based on how the contract likely would go. It's 133 for 9 players. You're going to want to have continued depth that you're going to add over time. And then you're going to get to Chris Paul. And that's the thing. When we talk about Chris Paul, it's not about next season. Because next season, the Suns could afford him comfortably, as you can see.
Without going into the tax.
Correct. It's the year after and the year after that. And then, hey, the year after that, Devin Booker's a free agent. And if you want to re-sign him, he's going to have a big max contract. So there are a lot of numbers here. And that's the problem for Sarver.
So let's just spell this out. Because for anybody who doesn't know, and Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, the NBA, the big thing that owners, from everything you read, want to avoid is the repeater tax. So that means if you are a team that goes into the tax more than one, basically 2 years in a row, and then if you go in, nobody wants to go into 2 years in a row. Some teams have, right? I think
it's 2 years in a row, and it's 3 out of 4 years.
And okay, so. With this, if they, and again, they could sign Paul for up to 4 years, right?
They could. So the Knicks could only sign him for up to
3 because of his age. So if they sign Paul for up to 4 years, and you talk about the extensions for Ayton, and you talk about the extension for Mikal, and you talk about Booker, and so forget 2 years in a row. If you want to keep this team together, you're going. It's just. He's going to be paying tax money out the you know what.
Yeah, it's going to be 2023 and 2023-24 that are going to be really expensive. And it's very easy for Sarver to say to the fan base, look, I just brought in Chris Paul. We won a title, again, assuming they win 2 of the next 5 games. What more do you want? And then say, well, we want Chris Paul. It's like, I'm sorry that I'm not paying out the ass for Chris Paul in his later 30s when I just brought you a title. And it's that philosophy of as well, like, you want this young core to thrive? Well, hey, we've got Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, all under contract. We have to pay Cam Johnson later. And guess what? Even with all of that, we're still paying Cameron Payne. So it's very easy to see him basically just say, no.
I forgot about Cam Johnson's extension. That's going to
right, be here exactly. You know it. Right. And so then it's kind of this thing again, where it goes back to, I'm sure the Suns thought, we'll get Chris Paul for 2 years. And then after that, he either walks or we re-sign him to a much lower deal because he'll be 37 years old. And how many teams are giving a big contract to this 37-year-old Chris Paul? Yeah. And now it's like, oh, well, we're talking about 36-year-old Chris Paul, which is still different. And we're talking about him coming off of, again, this maybe incredible a finals run. MVP. And how do you compete with that? So with
Can I ask you a philosophical question before we go to the next slide?
Sure.
We've all watched Chris Paul. 3 of us have watched Chris Paul for a long time. We have, I think, a good sense of his personality. This is my theory. I think if Sarver tries to, I don't want to say if Sarver tries to negotiate at all, but if Sarver really tries to come in and be like, okay, well, we can't do the 4th year guaranteed. We could give you 3 and we'll do 3 for 90 and then we'll like if Chris Paul hears something that's way off from the max, do you think that would piss him off to the point, being a prideful guy, where he would just be like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to go get paid elsewhere. Because I think that's in the cards.
My guess is that if the Suns lowball him to begin with, he just looks at that as, kind of spitting in his face.
Exactly.
Look what I just did for you. Look what we did together. And I could understand not offering a 4th year because it's the only team that can do that. I think if they offered the 4th year, that's hard to turn down. But if it's 3 years and we're talking about how other teams could beat that offer, what message is that saying? But I think it's a great lead in because now we can talk about the Chris Paul contract. So his max contract is not a 35% max. So just to, kind of reference this, when you're a 10 plus year veteran, you get a 35% max contract. That's what you're eligible for. But there's this funny kind of loophole in the CBA where if you are making money that's more than the max contract, you can actually get 105% of your previous salary. So this year, Chris Paul was making $41.3 million. He doesn't have to take less because the 10 plus year max is projected to be 39.3. So instead, any team can offer him $43,426,754. But again, the two things, number one, the Suns can still offer 4 years, and they're the only team that can offer 8% versus 5% raises. So those are things to at least consider. And again, this isn't me saying like he's going to get that max. It's just that's what he's eligible to receive.
But we should also touch on the fact that for anybody out there who's like, well, money may not be important to Chris Paul. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy. Hasn't Chris Paul made more money than any NBA player in history in terms of contracts, or is maybe 1 or 2 guys ahead of him? He's up there, right?
He's definitely up there. I'm not sure who's made more, who that might have been, but he's up there. I think it's, again, a pride thing as well. This also goes to the Derrick Rose conversation as a very quick side note. Derrick Rose is eligible to earn, I think, around $13.4 million this year from the Knicks if they keep his rights. And this idea of it's like, oh, well, D Rose has made plenty of money before. He's got Adidas money. It's a thing of pride. These players want to say like, hey, in my 30s, I'm worth this. I'm really good. I'm not taking a pay cut unless it's, maybe a different situation. I want to make the money that makes me look good, and I want to set myself up for more success as well. So if it's less than ideal, then sure, it's just business. But also it's like, again, how valued are you?
Yeah, he's this year he crossed the $300 million threshold. So he has a chance to, with this contract, cross the $400 million threshold, which that would be, that's not nothing.
That's incredible. Just incredible. So again, how much will Paul earn? It's really tough to say. I feel like there was one report on him earning 3 years, $100 million. And that was from a Bleacher Report article. And again, I'm not saying that's wrong. It feels like, from what I've seen, it's just kind of compounded from there. And it's blossomed. Like Berman talked about it and said multiple reports. And I don't know if that's multiple reports in general or if that's one report basing it off of the Bleacher report. So I don't think we really know. It's just, there have been very few instances where a player over the age of 35 has earned more than $20 million per year on a multiple year contract. It is, I believe, Kobe.
Which is, hold on.
Which, I mean, yeah,
that was a separate conversation.
Right.
That team, that was insane at the time. Everybody knew it was insane, and that was a gift to a guy who had dedicated his entire career to that franchise. So correct. I don't even count that. Keep going.
The next one is similar. It is going to be Dirk.
Yes, and that was
in the sense of
that was a going away present. Yeah,
right. One man, same team for his entire career. And the third is LeBron, which
the contract he's on right now. And he's, by the way, he's the guy that I'm pretty sure he's the only one that has more career earnings than Chris Paul. He's at 350 right now.
Yeah. And here's the other thing to consider as well. The 20 million threshold obviously changes a bit because the cap goes up. So it's not like you have to hold it to that bar and say, well, you know, like Kyle Lowry, if he gets that, it's not like he's crossing this incredible threshold. It's just the amount changes because the numbers change and whatnot.
So let me just make sure I have this correct. Phoenix can offer him 4 years starting at, what was the number? 44?
$43 million.
43. So technically, with 8% raises. So technically, the Suns can offer him a 4-year contract that gets pretty close to $200 million.
They could at max. Yeah.
Okay. And the Knicks, if they wanted to, can offer him a 3-year contract, which would exceed $130 million.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to 3 years.
No, it'd be more. It'd be more than that because if it's 45 million, it'd probably be closer to 140. But I mean, I'm nitpicking there. So yes, you're
it's
pretty
okay.
Close.
So again, if Sarver comes at him with like, we're not going more than 3 fully guaranteed years and we're not crossing $100 million for those 3 years, the Knicks could pretty comfortably beat that by 20 million total and not even be up all the way where they could be. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying they should.
They have the capability of doing it.
They have the capability to do that. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah. So again, if we're going back to this and we reevaluate when you consider all of that, it's too much money. As for those listening, I have gone back to the payroll that the Suns have, and it's exorbitant. And I can understand why Sarver wouldn't necessarily say that. So at least moving on, I mean, you have concerns, right? I'm sure there are people who are very apprehensive about Chris Paul, and I'd be lying if I said that a part of me wasn't somewhat concerned. I was concerned last year, except, I mean, basically that whole mock trade, the idea of where it's like, oh, you have Bobby Portis and Elfrid Payton and Frank and Knox and a first round pick.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was fun. Right. And also it was never going to happen because that the Thunder would have just preferred to not have to pick up Bobby Portis's $15 million option, for example. But
who would? Hey, listen, right. That's NBA. That's NBA finalist.
Right.
Bobby Portis to you, sir.
Fair enough. Okay. They didn't want to pick up Elfrid Payton's contract. First round exit.
That's
Elfrid
NBA.
Payton.
That's NBA,
to you, sir.
That's NBA player Elfrid Payton.
Yeah. Again, that is player in the NBA Elfrid Payton. So I mean, that wasn't going to work. But I get it. Your window now becomes now, right? Yeah. And the big thing with Chris Paul though is you're not just going to bring in Chris Paul, because that was the whole problem last time, right? It was like, well, Randall, people, including myself, wanted to throw him off New York, off the island. RJ Barrett was entering his second year. There was a lot of concern. The timelines didn't match up. Now it's slightly different. Julius Randle just was on an all-NBA team, finished 8th in MVP voting. RJ Barrett looks far better than he did, at least certainly during the Fizdalian time of his first season.
Fizdalian, I like
you're
that.
seeing improvements, but you need more. You need to do more. There's then the concern of super teams, right? If you have all these great teams around you, do you really want to go toe-to-toe? And I get it. But at the same time, there's always going to be a super team emerging. And I think that you could easily look at, say, 2024 and think, oh, it's wide open. Let's contend then. And you could do that. But we also, we just saw the Nets, a team that, again, I think would have won the championship if not for the fact that they were injured.
I agree.
They got injured. And the Bucks capitalized. And now the Bucks are in the finals. So things can happen. You can't just say like, well, let's not even try. It just, you shouldn't necessarily do that. Chris Paul's 36. I think that's a huge factor. But then the other thing is, well, even if you're paying Chris Paul a lot, what is the worst part? Like if assuming he stays healthy, because he's been pretty healthy since switching his diet. Yeah. You're paying a lot. I get that. But what is he at his lowest point? He's still a fantastic floor general. He's still going to be active on defense. He's still going to help inflate the players around you. So around him rather. So at what point, do you still get a high performance player that you're able to do something? And then lastly, Chris Paul is an asshole, but he'd be our asshole. We love
assholes here in New York.
That type of player, right? So
we love our assholes.
Those are the concerns that I think come to mind. John, what are your thoughts?
I have a few thoughts. I think Chris Paul he's the best pure point guard that I've ever seen. I mean, I'm a little older than you folks. I do remember John Stockton. John Stockton was always like my platonic ideal of a point guard, just because I was a big basketball card guy when growing up. And if you flipped over the other side of the basketball card, there were a lot of bold numbers on John Stockton's card in the assist column and also the steals column. I think he's still the career leader in steals, if I'm not mistaken. So I was like, well, that's my guy. But it's like watching Chris Paul, it's something different. He's amazing. That said, you knew there was a but. If the Knicks actually went ahead and gave Chris Paul what it would take to get him, and I'm convinced it would be, the reason I pitched it before is I think they would have to do something like crazy, because I know you were trying to put a positive spin on it, but one thing you didn't mention is that I guess this is closer to his kids, right? Phoenix? Yes. So, Phoenix to LA is like, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a hell of a lot easier to do than New York to LA. Well, I think money matters a lot to Chris Paul, and pride matters a lot to Chris Paul, and potentially becoming, for the moment at least, because LeBron is, I think Chris Paul, if he signed a certain contract, would be able to say for a hot minute that I have the most guaranteed money in NBA history, ahead of his buddy LeBron. I think that would matter. I'm not sure, and I'm coming at this from the perspective of a 38-year-old man who has 2 kids. I'm not sure it matters to him as much as the being close to his family at this point in his life. So I think you'd need to go to the crazy money area, which brings me to my conclusion, which is that for all people's fears about what the Knicks might do with Dame Lillard, giving up first-round picks and RJ Barrett, and like signing like Lonzo Ball to whatever 4 for $100, this feels like the Knicksy move, and I say that with all due respect to the guy who's probably going to win the Finals MVP award, but to give a guy who's this age and plays this position, who again, couple times in this playoffs, we weren't sure when he was going to get back on the court. To give him this kind of money when you don't really need to. And I respect everything you just said a minute ago, Jeremy. I do, in terms of like, this could be their shot, and this could merely. I don't see them becoming a championship team if they sign Chris Paul. Absent some other move that I'm not foreseeing. And again, you're limited, and maybe we'll talk about this. You're limited with what other moves you can make because of the money you're going to have to commit to Chris Paul. It wasn't that long ago that the Rockets attached all kinds of stuff to dump Chris Paul, and I understand that move looks terrible in retrospect. It looks like that trade may go down as the worst trade of the century, worse than the Celtics Nets trade. But at the time, people were like, I could see it. I get it, right? I get it. You see where I'm coming from?
Of course I do. And I think that's the key thing, is that, again, you're basically paying for past performance. You're hoping that he plays up to this level and that there's not a steep drop off. And again, that's why I was talking about what's the worst part. And I think an even worse part than, he's a very good player who's just paid a lot of money, but not an elite player anymore, is, he's a very good player who can't see the court because mileage and age and injuries are catching up with him. And that's what you have to be careful of. But the big thing with Chris Paul is it has to fit with what he wants. It's this Knicksy move you're talking about, unless you build around him properly. And again, it's like, well, how are we building around a 36-year-old player? And well, I think you have to basically then say, we're going in on a star right now. We are doing something where we're adding Chris Paul in free agency.
Yep.
And we're adding another star via trade right next to him, because we are capitalizing on the time he has left.
Oh my God.
And that's where we work out.
I'm afraid of what's going to happen now.
So basically there are going to be 3 scenarios here, because again, I felt like it doesn't make sense to talk about Chris Paul from the Knicks standpoint unless you're incorporating someone else.
Okay.
Otherwise, but then what comes with the territory of that is, okay, great. We're incorporating these other players, but now Chris Paul is going to have to earn less, because in order to fit other players, he's not going to, the Knicks aren't going to be able to offer him $40+ million and trade for another star based on how the money would work. It's too tough. So,
right.
I mean, the first is, again, Kawhi. and I just want to make this clear. Like, for these 3 players that I talk about, all of it seems, again, from the outside looking in, unrealistic.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's either CP3 and another player, or it's not CP3 at all. Yes.
For anybody not watching on YouTube, there's a salary cap table here that has Kawhi Leonard's salary, which would be his max, obviously, if they saw him. There's a blank for Chris Paul. So what is that?
The blank for Chris Paul is because we haven't been able to add it yet, because this is like the step 1 of the 2-step process. Okay. So this would basically be that the Knicks would sign Kawhi, they'd renounce all of their cap holds, and then they'd get Chris Paul in a sign and trade. Okay.
And how much would he be making?
Well, so we'll get there in a moment. But and I mean, the reason the cap space is red as opposed to green is, I mean, again, you're using Chris Paul and you're sending out salaries. The salaries that you would trade out here are, say, Obi Toppin and Kevin Knox. Now, if you
I'm assuming Obi would go in the Chris Paul sign and trade.
Well, yes, it's because you're signing Kawhi at a cap space, and then you're using the leftover money to then get Chris Paul.
Okay. And Julius Randle's still here in this scenario, and RJ Barrett's still here in this scenario. How about that?
Exactly. And now, I mean, if the Suns feel like they want first round picks out of this, fine. They can, I'd rather not. Again, because you're still giving them the 8th pick that was taken last year. You're giving them expiring salary. Yeah. Sure, if you want to toss in a future first, by all means, maybe have it be the 2023 first for Dallas or New York, and then the Suns are essentially at pick equilibrium at 2000 and from 2022 onward.
Okay.
So, but if you're doing this plan and you're just sending out those 2 players, then essentially you're giving Chris Paul $30 million in his first year. And then it would be 31.5 the year after and 33 the year after that. So essentially you're saying, if you're the Knicks, you're giving Chris Paul $94.5 million over 3 years. That's still a pretty good contract.
It's a lot of money. I don't personally, I would be surprised if he signed for that number.
But again, John, any conversation that we have in terms of pairing him with a star, that has to be the range. Like he could get $35 million. It also means that he's signing up to not get a star this year. And then he's wasting a year of his career. And who knows how much time he has left where he's going to be this great player.
I wonder, just again, we're all friends, right? Safe place.
Depends what you're saying, but go on.
Safe place. I just fucking wonder if the Knicks, I can't even say this with a straight face, if the Knicks had Chris Paul on the, it's like, did people still do three-way calls? Can you still do a three-way call on like a house phone? Okay, an office phone, whatever. Okay, Chris Paul's on the line. Yeah, I'm in if you could get Kawhi, and I'll sign for that number. Okay, hang on. Leon presses hold. Hopefully it doesn't hang up. Ring, ring, ring. Who represent Uncle Dennis? Uncle Dennis, right? Uncle Dennis, I'm sure, is the money man. Hey, Uncle Dennis, CP3's in. If you're in, do you think Kawhi's like, I can play in New York with Julius Randle and Chris Paul, as opposed to playing fucking here with Paul George, who's had a very good postseason? I wonder what Kawhi Leonard what his reaction would be. That's all. I just wonder.
And again, if you're the Knicks, you're still keeping key components because, I mean, yes, you do need the Suns to play ball with you, right? Because you need to sign and trade for Chris Paul. But is it going to be that extreme where it's like we have to gut the roster for some other star that's on the market? I certainly don't think so. So, and I think the Suns would be comfortable doing it because they still have a great team on their hands. And they can figure something out. Maybe, but maybe in addition to, right? Let's say the Knicks drafted Sharif Cooper 19th overall. And the Suns look at it and say, hey, we need a point guard suddenly. Sure, we'll take Sharif Cooper. That sounds great. Then you don't have to, give us a future first. That sort of thought process. So
it's sure.
Okay. So this is the Kawhi train.
Okay.
The next one would be for someone like Bradley Beal.
I knew it was going to be him. It always comes back to Bradley Beal.
It always comes back to Bradley Beal.
Has become the patron saint of the Knicks Film School. We just throw him in, Yeah. It's fine.
And I'd like to give a special shout out to Bradley Beal for scoring 2 points against Nigeria and lowering his trade value to the Knicks. So thank you, Brad. Appreciate that. In this context, basically the Knicks would sign Chris Paul. They would renounce all of their cap holds except for Derrick Rose's. Trade
again, keeping Randall, keeping Barrett,
RJ, and keeping Mitch. At least you hope so. And then trading quickly Toppin, Knox, the 19th pick. 2022, 2023, 2024 first rounders. Basically, the whole mindset here is we'd like to keep the best players that we have. So if we have to part with the younger guys or some of them and even more picks than I just listed, it's worth it because you're just getting Bradley Beal, you're getting Chris Paul.
And you're getting Chris Paul.
And you still have Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson. But again, like if you have to pay more for future assets, that's okay because you're going in on the now. And just a side note, and John, because I know you're going to absolutely love this, but can't you see a world where the Knicks trade Obi Toppin and then get Carmelo Anthony to fill his spot as a backup and then you have Chris Paul and Carmelo's last year in the league and he gets to ride out in the sunset. Hopefully he wins a title. Like, can't you just see this idea formulating with Chris Paul and he's like, oh yeah, I get to play with my buddy and get to New York and make money.
Is Dwayne Wade precluded from being the owner of the Jazz and playing basketball at the same time?
I think he is. And I think LeBron is as well since he's under contract.
Since he's under contract with another team, there's no loophole there that allows it. Like I know in soccer sometimes you could rent a player out. Could we rent LeBron and maybe Gabrielle Union could coach the team alongside Tibbs next year? I think that would be just fabulous. I just really am looking forward to all of the 3 to the dome as Andrew just mimed.
Yeah. Now, I do think it is worth mentioning as well, and this kind of fits what you're saying in terms of, well, let's say Chris Paul wanted more than a very exact amount I have here of 29,570. Yeah, exactly. 29.5. If the Knicks renounced Derrick Rose's cap hold for almost $10 million, you could basically say, hey, Chris Paul, we're going to give you close to like $37 million. And the thought of that probably makes you gag a little bit because that is an absurd amount.
Well, hold on, though. I'm paying Chris Paul $37 million to come play alongside Bradley Beal, Julius Randle, and RJ Barrett.
Exactly. That is the key factor.
Well, that's interesting.
Right. I kept Rose here just to show how you could make it work if you kept Paul in that same salary range of, say, $28 to $30 million that first year. But now, I mean, you're looking at a very different situation. You're looking at someone who could actually make more than Phoenix is offering and still come to a place like New York and still play with great talent in an even easier conference. So it gets far more fascinating at that point.
Can this team win a championship? Let's real quick. So Chris Paul, Bradley Beal, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson as your starting five. Mm-hmm. Oh man, I'm looking for some.
You are keeping Vildoza for whatever.
I'm keeping
worth.
Vildoza.
You're keeping the 21st pick.
I'm keeping Emmanuel Quickly.
No, you are not.
Why am I not keeping Emmanuel?
The Wizards have to get something of value, and I'm sure Wizards fans, if they ever came across this, would say again, Jeremy, if Bradley Beal is worth so much more than you're giving him, and maybe he is, for sure, but it's 1 year's worth of salary that he has. It's a rental. You're not going to see Bradley Beal get the haul that someone, like another star might get who has multiple years on his contract.
If it's not enough that we're sending them 19 and 21 and the 22, 24, and 26 first rounders unprotected.
I left out 21, but again, yes, I agree. It's your 2 first round picks from the 2020 draft.
That's 5 first round picks for a guy who can walk. He can walk in a year.
Exactly. That's what you hope at least the selling point is. And if he's out the door, and if you're Washington, and it's like, okay, well, what are we going to get that's more than this? Again, I think you could talk about the Warriors angle. I don't think the Warriors want or need Bradley Beal. Scoring isn't really.
He only scored 2 points against Nigeria. What good is he? He's bum.
Exactly. I know he's a scrub. But the point being here, where it's like they don't necessarily need that. They could use someone else that's not Bradley Beal, who maybe shores up their front court a bit more, as opposed to getting a great scoring guard. So
you'd have Taj back on vet minimum.
You would take Taj back. You would even have the 32nd pick that you could go over the salary cap to sign. So a lot of angles that you could get there. And then when you look at everything involved, I mean, again, the Knicks are just going to be paying a ridiculous amount moving forward. It doesn't matter because we're talking about someone who's able to make a lot of money in Chris Paul and Bradley Beal as well. And then before you know it, RJ is going to get his extension. And Julius Randle, of course, is extension eligible in 2022. So as long as you're the Knicks and you're comfortable paying for these 4 players, that's key. And I think the one thing, and I'll turn it back over to you, is in my heart, those 4 players, Bradley Beal, Chris Paul, Julius Randle, and RJ Barrett, for the next 3 years, I don't think any of them will. Okay, I shouldn't say will. I don't believe that of those 4, there's gonna be an alpha of them. I think that you have incredible number 2s and number 3s who can, play great basketball. But I think by playing with one another, they can elevate each other. Like again with Bradley Beal, I don't see him as a top 10 player.
I don't see him either as a top 10 player.
But if the Chris Paul effect is with Bradley Beal, and you've got Julius Randle also on the court, and you got RJ Barrett, even if he's just spotting up, taking catch and shoot threes from the corner and able to pull up even more, like you're able to do so much more than what you could have beforehand. And it just emphasizes their strengths even more.
I think this finals, if nothing else, as revealed, because I feel like this group gets revealed every year. I think the Lakers could say this a year ago. The Raptors could say this 2 years ago. Maybe not so much the Warriors, because the Warriors were just so good at the top. It didn't, the bottom didn't matter, but it's as if you don't have 2 top 10 guys or a top 2 guy and like a top 15 guy, you need to have no weak spots. The Suns this year have no weak spots. None. 0. They don't ever put it. Now, maybe that'll be, again, I feel weird talking about this before they play game 3, and Torrey Craig just went out with an injury, so it thins them out a little bit, but like that's been their thing up until this point. They've had no weak spots. But again, can the Knicks get a minimum guy in there? Can they keep Emmanuel quickly? Does Vildoza turn into something? These are like the nitty gritty questions that could make the difference between this fantasy team winning a championship and not. I'd still sign up for this. I'd sign.
You
up
have to. I mean, if you're saying like, hey, I can get 3 top 20-ish players, assuming that even if Randall isn't what he was last year, like you're still signing up for
I think
3
you might
guys
have
who
4.
just made the All-Star team, and RJ Barrett as he's in his 3rd year.
I'm here for RJ Barrett, top 20 player at some point.
Me too. Hopefully it's through the duration of this contract. And even if it's not in year 3 RJ, maybe it's year 4 RJ when you've got Bradley Beal. I think he won't even be 30 years old. Julius Randle will be 28 years old. Again, you can figure out ways to pick up the slack in one way or another and build a deeper team around those players.
What I like about this is if the unthinkable happens and Chris Paul goes down with a bad injury, misses part of the season, misses all of the season, whatever, this is kind of like the Kawhi Paul George thing where you're trading Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and all of your first round picks, not really just for Paul George. You're trading them to get Paul George and Kawhi. So whatever money you've given Chris Paul, whatever, you got the second guy out of it. So I co-sign with Kawhi, co-sign with Bradley Beal. Who's number 3?
Number 3, familiar name.
Oh, goodness.
Damian Lillard. I had to do it. I just had to.
Fucking guys.
So yeah, it would be signing Chris Paul, renouncing
somewhere
all
Ian
your
McClellan
capital.
is smiling. Anyway, continue.
Then trading every future first round pick swap, whatever, and then trying to keep RJ and Mitch for Lillard. And again, this then goes back right to the conversation we had last week of, can you even forget about RJ? Are you now keeping RJ and Mitchell Robinson? That seems tough to do. But again, if you are trading Obi Toppin, Emmanuel Quickley, the 19th pick, the 21st pick, and then literally every single pick you have in your cupboard, which as we counted them could basically be 6 of them, and then the rest being pick swaps. I mean, my God, we're talking about an absurd amount of young players and young picks, which if we're facing it, that is a better package than what the Nets gave up for James Harden. Is it not?
It is. And I would just respectfully like to say, if you gave me 1,000 to 1 odds on this, I might. No, if you gave me 1,000, I'd put $10 down. I'd not more than 10. I would not put $20. I would not pull a 20 out of my pocket. 10, I'll put 10.
Yeah. So again, it's that's, as you said prior with SGA going to OKC, that is the cost of doing business.
Yes.
Essentially. I love it. And you're hoping to keep your best players. And then this is what it looks like. You've got Dame, Chris Paul, Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, and Mitchell Robinson. And then
me and you, because that's who's going to be
right. And you figure the rest out. It reminds me of this SNL. Yeah. We'll all join. It reminds me of this SNL sketch that they had a few years ago when LeBron was on the Cavs, and they were talking about the supporting pieces, and it's just random guys that aren't NBA players really, or no one's ever heard of. That would be the same situation. Great. So again, the thing that you would probably say here is Damian Lillard's a better player, and you can just figure out the depth from there. Versus the other one, or the other two, I guess we laid out, which is okay, well, you're getting wing talent. You've far more depth that's under contract. You don't lose every single pick, basically, or control of it that you have for your cupboard for the next 7 years. Again, if we had to look at 3 scenarios, this is my least favorite, and we're talking about Damian Lillard and Chris Paul. So
yeah, I mean, two quick closing thoughts. 3 quick things. One, can we agree that absent the Knicks pairing him with one of these 3 guys, and I can't even think of another name who, or I was going to say, or another star, but I don't even know who that would be. Pairing him with someone of this ilk, it would be a poor idea for the Knicks to pay Chris Paul $40 million a year, upwards of $40 million a year. Can we agree on that?
It would be a horrendous idea.
It would be a horrendous idea.
Hate every part of it.
Again, I went on my whole rant before to argue why Chris Paul would not sign with the Knicks for anything other than an absurd overpay. let's just say I'm completely wrong and he just wants nothing more than to come play in Madison Square Garden, would you sign him for 3 for $90? Again, not with one of these other guys coming.
Probably not.
Probably not. Okay. I'm not sure I would either. I would have to think about that for a while. It's not an automatic no, but it's a like, don't know about
and if
that.
you're Chris Paul, what is the interest? You've got a good situation in Phoenix. Well, you could just do that.
Okay.
So that's one way to kind of look at it. But
2 other quick things. I think the Beal Chris Paul thing is really interesting. And I can't believe I had not thought about that yet this offseason. I want to take a bow, but I'm sitting down. Or I want you to take a bow. Sorry. You take a bow. Yes.
Thank you. I actually, for full disclosure, last week when we were talking about, I think it was Dame, and then I was going to transition to the Beal conversation, which I did. And I had texted Andrew, I was like, I have this really fun proposal that I think makes a lot of sense. Should I do it? I'm really happy with it. And he was like, oh yeah, you could do it if you want. And I was like, maybe I'll save it. And he said, no, I'm really interested now. What is it? And I decided to lay off because I thought it would be a little too much. And I'm glad I did because, we have more content. Daddy made you your favorite. So it's great. It works out.
Jesus Christ. The last thing before we get to our special announcement, unless Jeremy has something else cooked up. Wait, is there anything else before
There's one more slide just to bring it all home.
Okay. Yeah. Well, good. Finish on Paul because my point has to do with someone other than Paul.
Great. So again, it's will the Suns rob Payne to pay Paul? I was really upset that Sarver's first name or no player on the Suns was named Peter. That would have been a really perfect opportunity. Yeah. Again, the decision's in Phoenix's hands. I think that Paul's value, and this is something to keep in mind. Sure, Paul could get 3 years and $100 million. But if no team is offering him 3 years and $100 million, he's not getting 3 years and $100 million. He's getting what, at some point, he's going to get a lot of money, but there has to be a benchmark. And if the Suns and the Knicks say, hey, Chris, we're not paying you more than $30 million, then he doesn't really have anywhere else to go. He's not going to sign with OKC. He's not going to sign with the Spurs. So he's looking at a very, kind of different market than maybe the hypothetical of, well, what if he gets 35? What if he gets 40?
This is a 2-team thing.
It is.
Yeah. For sure.
It's worth wondering what he gives you when he's 36, 37, and 38 years old. And I think that's a very valid concern, and it's one that I certainly subscribe to. And that is why, as we've talked about, again, if these 3 ideas seem absurd, sure, they probably are. But again, it's the mindset of unless you're doing that, it doesn't make sense for any party involved to then sign Chris Paul to a big deal. It's got to be done right. If you want to build it right, that's how you do it, especially if it's like the Beal way, because ideally Kawhi, sure, because you give up far less by doing that. But this idea where last week I talked about with Dame, with the trade, you're on the hot seat if you're the front office because you've traded everything for this window. For the first 2 scenarios, you haven't done that really. More so the first than the second, but for really 1 and 2, like if there's a way where you can have a great team now and that team can still add pieces 2, 3, 4, even 5 years down the road, because as years pass, you get access to more and more of your picks, then that's a different story. Yeah. So it's got to be super team or it's not. And if it's not, you look at other options and you assess, the trade market moving down the line, or you look again at 2022.
Okay, I lied. I have 2 more things, and one you just spurred with this slide. Wouldn't it be interesting if the Knicks, if people thought the Chris Paul was using the Knicks as a negotiating leverage point to just get more money from the Suns, when in reality, the Knicks knew exactly what they were doing, that Chris Paul was always going to go back to the Suns, and they were doing it to make sure the Suns let Payne walk so that the Knicks could sign Payne to a deal that is somewhat reasonable. I think he's played himself to a market of about $10 million a year. Personally, I cannot see Robert Sarver forking over more than $30 million to Paul and another $10 million plus a year to campaign. And what other team, assuming Lonzo goes to Chicago? Oh, wait, no. Payne already played in Chicago. He's not fucking going back to Chicago. What other team is going to offer campaign a starting job next year? There is no other team.
I can think of one.
What? Who?
Maybe. Dallas. Maybe. Depends on what their situation is with Tim Hardaway Jr.
I don't think they're going to have the money because Josh Smith, it might as well be Josh Smith. Josh Richardson is going to opt into his player option. And if with Timmy's cap hold, or more likely they just sign him to the number that's going to be less than his cap hold, they're just not going to have the money.
I mean, potentially, but we've seen it's pretty easy to, if they wanted to dump Josh Richardson's salary to open up more space, they could. If they want to let Tim Hardaway Jr. walk, they could.
I don't think they. I personally don't think that they're gonna.
No, I don't think they will either. It's just I could see if they went that way, you have someone who could at least start around Luka. If you wanted to do that, that is one pathway. But yes, the moment you started saying like, what if this is a grand scheme, Grant Hill type situation? I thought. He's gonna go for campaign, isn't he? I agree.
I think they're gonna go. I think Dallas is gonna go with DeRozan, which will make every Knicks fan happy,
except for you.
No, listen.
I know.
Anyway, but campaign on the Knicks next year is interesting. But that being said, your Beal slide really got me thinking not about Chris Paul and Beal, but like shit. Lowry and Beal is like a real thing that could happen this summer. If the Wizards open that door, and who knows what, I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes there. Has Beal, does he need to demand out? What does that look? I have no idea, but whatever. Well, that's the only thing I want to say.
If only one of us, I don't know, had done something crazy like a PowerPoint or two that had like Lowry and Beal, or wouldn't that be crazy? Seeing that today for whatever reason made me really reconsider the concept of a Lowry Beal pairing here with RJ, with Randall. I just think it's interesting. That's all. Okay, are we done? We're done. And now it's time for our special announcement, right? Okay. We'll keep it relatively quick because we've been talking for a while, thanks to soccer. And it's I'm not going to let you forget that. So Knicks Film School is official. Well, it shouldn't say official because so I guess a quick mini history lesson. Years ago, when we first started Knicks Film School, we went to Patreon, and we had a Patreon and just offered it to folks who wanted to give $1 a month to show their appreciation for us, which we appreciate everybody who has done that. And it will be, if you're one of the people listening who did that over the last few years, you're going to be getting an email from us soon. We are going to go from dipping our toe in the Patreon waters to diving full in. Jeremy, do you prefer a cannonball? Yeah, I think it sounds a lot better than a belly flop.
Not belly flop.
It's not a belly flop.
Is it? But it's not like a pristine dive. Anyway, we are going big into Patreon. I don't know how else to say that. And the reason we're doing this is because, first and foremost, we genuinely, as you could probably tell from listening to us every week, love what we do. We love talking to each other. We love talking basketball. We love the Knicks. And we feel like there's a little bit more that we could do. And quite frankly, there are people that reach out to us a lot and they're like, listen, we love you guys. We want to support you, and we wish you did even more. So this is kind of our way to do exactly that. So I guess Patreon, for anybody who doesn't know, is a service that, if you're a content creator like we are, allows you to share additional content with the people who may want to consume that. And there are tiers that you, as a consumer, can buy into. And depending on what tier you buy into, you will get a certain amount of content. Shall we go through our tiers, Jeremy?
We absolutely should. There's one other thing that I'd love to add before we do that.
The most important thing. We're not taking anything away.
Everything that you have been receiving that we have been providing is staying free. None of our Monday pod, our Wednesday pod, and our Friday pod.
That's all staying.
It's all accessible. This is all bonus content, and ways for us to create more of it as well.
So if you like your cupcakes with no icing, you could keep eating your cupcakes with no icing. But if you're an icing guy, I love icing. This is my right up your alley. Okay, so let's go through the tiers real quick. So $3 tier, Starberry, because I mean, who amongst us wouldn't love to get that tattoo on the side of our heads? This is basically our way, your way to help us keep the lights on here at Knicks Film School. It's $3. You'll be showing your appreciation. This is basically like $3 to thank us for just being so amazing, and awesome. Like that's basically that. Jeremy, you want to talk about the Mellow Tier?
Yeah, we can talk about the Mellow Tier.
Let's talk about that. So the Mellow Tier, as you might have guessed, is $7. So this is the one that we feel like is probably the sweet spot for most people. So $7, a lot of money, right? It's the price of like we talked about this, Andrew. It's a venti something from Starbucks with like 2 shots of espresso.
I think it's more of a venti frappuccino, I believe Starbucks calls it.
Yes.
With whipped cream, with like an additional thing.
Yeah.
Yes. I think the actual total with tax is like $6 and change. So
okay.
No disrespect to our friends at Starbucks.
We love Starbucks.
If you want to send us free stuff, by all means, go ahead.
Absolutely.
But now we don't have to because we have Patreon.
It is the price of a beer at a decent bar.
Yes.
Okay. So here,
movie theater popcorn. That's the actual thing.
No, man. Movie theater popcorn is like $9.50.
It's expensive.
I went yesterday. Movie theater popcorn, $7. For small.
I gotta go to. Yeah, I was about to say that's for not the tub.
For context, this is cheaper than popcorn.
Yeah,
there you go.
Basically, the way that we're angling this.
Regardless, go ahead, Jeremy. Explain what you get in the Mellow Tier.
So for the Mellow Tier, you get everything. In the Starberry tier, which is showing us your appreciation, which we certainly appreciate. And in addition, you will receive, one additional KFS podcast per week. It's a bonus episode. It revolves around our thoughts on other teams and storylines around the NBA, which will, of course, interact with how the Knicks play prominently into that. Of course, this is still a Knicks-centric podcast, and we will just have great conversations about all 30 teams. So that RSS feed is going to be solely provided through Patreon, and it'll be available on iTunes or Spotify.
So I should add, just real quick, John, it's not just like the RSS feed. The video for those episodes will also be available on Patreon. It will create like a private YouTube video that only you will have access to.
Yeah, so. And I I'm going to be on obviously all these. We'll be a rotating cast of characters. Jeremy will be popping on, Andrew will be popping on. Chris will be popping on. My buddies Bernard and Yash, I'm sure will be popping on occasionally. All kinds of people. We'll have special guests. And it's like, here's the only thing I wanted to say about that. We bullshit about the league at large. We bullshit about the Knicks and like have Knicks related conversations that don't make it onto the show a lot because they're just like us like shooting shit. But we also like to talk about the NBA generally, but we try to keep it's like to the big picture Knicks topics on this podcast. So the Patreon, the $7 tier gets you basically all of our additional thoughts. It'll basically be like living in our daily text threads, of which they are active and they get a little kooky and crazy. But they're fun. I promise you they are fun and you will enjoy them. And that's a $7 tier. That's the Mellow Tier. Okay. Next up, we got 2 more to go. This is for the big ballers. The Earl Monroe tier. Okay. So you're helping us keep the lights on. You're getting the additional podcast every week. In addition to that, you're going to get every 6 months a free piece of KFS merchandise that is up to the value of the monthly subscription. So you're going to get that, I think, after being subscribed for 3 months, because we don't want people signing up and then like canceling in a month. And yeah, so it's going to be basically your way to get some exclusive merchandise in addition to the free podcast a week. Did I miss anything, Jeremy?
I'll add that if you're thinking, hey, well, some of the items on the KFS merch store might be more than $15. Well, we will let you know when sales with TeePublic are occurring, and they happen frequently. So we can then have you time that perfectly. So, hey, that t-shirt that's in the 20s, not anymore. It's actually like $13, and that fits snugly into what you're saying. So that sort of thing, we can offer that. We can keep doing that sort of thing. Find you the right deals, and it'll be then on us. So it works out in your favor and in ours.
And then, of course, we had to pay homage to my main man, Patrick Ewing. We do have a $33 tier. Now, I just want to say up front, I don't know that there's any content creator in the world that I would give $33 to, because I am a cheap SOB. But there are people out there, I have met them, that have done very well for themselves in life, and for whom $33 is like, it's just not a very big deal. If you are one of these folk, if you are so lucky, this might be the tier for you. Jeremy, tell them what they win for the $33 Ewing tier.
They win a free car. No, they our $33 Ewing members will receive everything that we've just said. So you're going to help us keep the lights on. You'd receive an additional KFS podcast per week, a free KFS merch. It's going to be on us. It's up to the value of the monthly subscription, which in this case will actually be $33. An invite to our monthly KFS town hall, which actually is something that we should mention for the $15 one.
I was wondering if something happened where the town hall is no longer in the
No, sorry. That was my bad. $15 tier also gets you an invite to monthly tier, KFS town hall. So there you go.
And that'll be with the three of us. Chris will be hopping on folks as well, and we'll have other people, coming and going. So it'll be all of that. Furthermore, it'll be an invitation to watch a KFS pod recorded live. So, you can interact before, interact after. You can watch the magic happen in real time.
And that'll be once a month you get that invitation.
Correct. It will be free merch, actually. We're going to give you free merch that is exclusively available just to your target. So what that means here is this. In case you haven't noticed, one of the things that I've been very careful about is us not getting sued when it comes to merch. I have a background in licensing and rights clearance, and boy, do I not want to get sued and have KFS be in that position.
Thank you.
Of course. There is potentially a gray area, and that's why we have John as a lawyer and Oz and Yash and anyone else wants to help.
I feel bad
the bottom
for all
line
of you.
here. The bottom line here is there are some great designs that Ernie Prada, who has designed some fantastic things, he has not been able to release, and we have not been able to release because of licensing issues. Here, we would be giving you things for free. So that's the bottom line. It'd be exclusive stuff. It will also include hats. We want to do beanies and hats that will have our logos. That is not a rights clearance or licensing issue. That is completely focused on them. So if you're in that tier, you can get some of those free things as well. And then lastly, it'll be, again, we've talked about merch and discounts. It'll be additional promotions for items that you like as well.
If you want to be like Mr. KFS, then the Ewing tier is for you. But here's the last thing I want to say. For anybody who's followed me for a while, who read my intro when I went paid for the newsletter and the whole thing, like I generally feel like a little queasy about like taking money from people. It's just because I do this because I love it. That said, I will say that all of us put a crazy amount of time into this. It has become our lives. I'll just speak for myself. I know I could say that. It is my life, and we do really want to be able to do more for you guys. So this is basically our way to be able to do more for you. And hopefully, people want to get on board with that and are, excited to consume even more KFS content. Last but not least, where can people sign up for this?
Patreon.com/Knicks Film School. I think when we when this pod is available, there is a link in the description where you can go and sign up for whichever tier you'd like, whether it be the general support tier, the Starberry tier, or the extra pod a week for $7, or the high roller tiers, where you're getting free merch perks. Merch perks. They'll be in the description of every podcast going forward. We will also, when a Patreon podcast drops, I'll put like a 5-minute sample of the pod so you can hear what you're missing, and then the link to Patreon in said description, as well as in our YouTube link channel in the description. There will be easy access to the Patreon, and I think we're recording this in the past, which then technically means in the future I'm going to do this. It will also be pinned to the Knicks Film School Twitter account by the time you're hearing this. So there are plenty of ways to find our Patreon channel. You can just go to patreon.com and search Knicks Film School, and you'll find us there pretty easily.
Okay. Well, we hope you guys are as excited as we are. And we're looking forward to giving you guys some more stuff. So thank you. Thank you, Jeremy, for today's, just really take a bow. The Dame and CP3. That'll be in my head when I hit the pillow tonight. Anything else from you, Jeremy, before we get out of here?
I'll just kind of put a bow on it in terms of Patreon. Again, I love what I do here. I have so much fun with my friends, and it's a wonderful opportunity, and it's hard work. It really can be, but I would do it for free. I have done it for free. I love it. And it's the sort of thing where, whatever you feel comfortable, could be $0, could be more, doesn't really matter. I thank you for your time, for your cooperation, all of it. On my end, I love these presentations. I love being able to teach and do what I can. With that said, of course, we share one thing in common, and that we have the same amount of hours in a day and in a week. And that's the sort of thing where, again, I love it, and I'm going to keep doing it. And there are people such as yourself, maybe, who, if you're speaking to you directly, that we just really appreciate your ears, your eyes, and if you feel so kind enough, your wallets. I guess I'm going to paraphrase here, but in Coming to America, there's a great line. It's about how I'm going to butcher it, but Lisa McDowell, the lovely Lisa McDowell, talks about how we love the kind of money that jingles, but we really like the kind of money that folds. So it's a credit card, so it doesn't even fucking matter. But that's all for me.
Please don't send us cash. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Please don't send us cash.
Don't mail us $7 worth of coins, for example. If you do the Mellow Tier, that would be bad.
We will mail you a basket to your house that you could put money in, and then you could mail the basket back. Keeping with Coming to America style. Andrew, anything else before we get out of here?
I'll make it quick. Patreon was something that we wanted to do as an extra thing. Like, I can't stress enough. Everything you're getting now, you're still going to get. This is additional. And we've been blessed by the support that you guys have shown us in other ways, whether it be in downloads or listens or interaction on Twitter. And the monetary support you've shown us is even crazier, because sometimes this doesn't even feel like work. Sometimes it does, though. So if you would like to support us in other ways on Patreon, we appreciate it. And we're excited for those of you that decide to join us in this next chapter here at Knicks Film School.
Giddy up. That's pretty sweet. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks in advance to anyone who wants to, join up for the Patreon. And we'll be back with another episode in the middle of the week. Until then, enjoy yourselves, and we'll talk to you soon. Adios.